Welcome back. Who here is excited about cookies? Everyone is usually very excited about cookies. That's why break is lovely. Cool. So do we have any new folks who have just joined the tutorial at this stage? Okay, so if you're new and you're just joining the tutorial, ask your friendly neighbors. We'll grab a USB key and ask your friendly neighbors, and they will help you get up and going. There's a VM to boot with, and we've already gone through exercise 1 and exercise 2 on the wiki page, and they can point you to the wiki page. And the good news is the room is now full of people who are experts on exercise 1 and exercise 2 who can help you catch up. So if you're new, grab a USB key, and your neighbors can help you. Raghu, I'm locked out again. So how are folks feeling about this so far? Are you feeling like it's, you all seem to be getting it, which is great, and you seem to be picking up pace as you go along. Exercise 2 went quite a bit faster, now that we're all up and going. So I think we're doing well. Okay. So moving on to exercise 3, implementing your Hello World RPC. So this is actually pretty straightforward, and all the information is there on the wiki page. You just need to edit 2 files. The first is your Hello World. You need to create a Hello World impl.java, which is the class for the implementation of your Hello World service. And I actually give you a complete version of the file here. I would actually suggest strongly that copy the imports and that kind of stuff, which is annoying, but actually do sort of type through the body of the Hello service, because that will sort of get into your fingers the kind of thing that you're doing. Because what we're doing is very straightforward. We get a Hello World input, we're constructing the output, and then we're returning it. So it's not hugely complex, but sometimes it can get it under your fingernails to type somewhat for that part of it, instead of just copy and pasting the whole thing. And so once you've got that implementation, then you need to hook it up. And that you do by editing the helloprovider.java. And in the helloprovider.java, basically what you need to do is in your on-session initiated, by the way, this line here, that's the line that produced the log file you looked for in exercise 1. This is the entry point for you into the application. And so this is the hello provider session log, and you just want to initiate it. You just want to hook up by registering your Hello World impl as an RPC implementation with the MD-SAL. And this line does it. Basically, you grab the session, you add an RPC implementation, you tell it what kind of thing it is, and you pass the implementation. And then it's also good hygiene to have a close method that will go through and close that registration. We'll basically close this when, it will close down the service registration that you have when you yourself are closed down. Otherwise, you wind up with people who are done, and yet it still looks like RPCs can be delivered to you. Question?
So we're implementing the impl class
Yep.
outside of the generated function.
Correct.
But this hello provider is in the generated function?
Hello provider already exists. We're modifying that. So it already exists. You will find that it already has this log line, which is what generated what you saw when you ran.
So is this a standard practice of having to modify the generated code?
Well, so the provider class was not generated by Yang tools. It's not generated specifically from the model. It's provided as part of the archetype. So it's essentially, it was provided to you as a convenience, because my experience as a developer is the thing that makes me happiest in life is when things run. And so I wanted to make sure that things got from 0 to run as quickly as possible. So, yeah. Normally, the stuff that's generated by Yang tools in the Yang sal gen directory, don't change that because it's going to be stomped every single time you build. But this is only created by the archetype. Other questions?
Are we supposed to edit this with Eclipse?
I would choose to edit it with Eclipse because it has really nice characteristics for editing Java, yes.
Okay, well, we did a good job of providing us the CLI path,
Uh-huh.
but that's not very obvious in the...
Hang on.
Which one is that?
I will show you. So if we look at Eclipse, we're looking at the Hello Impl project. And when we drill down into hello impl, there's a source main Java directory, which has two packages. This is the one we're interested in. You can see the hello provider here. And let me actually pull this back so it's a little more readable. And so this is the hello provider you have, which just has this log message that you saw the output from. Does that make sense? And you want to put your hello world impl in the same package. So you would right-click, new class, and you could create your hello world impl there. My general recommendation is if you're going to edit Java, use something like Eclipse or IntelliJ. It's just, it's really abusive of humans to make them edit Java otherwise. I usually just let them hang around. They don't bother me particularly. No, I understand. And that's perfectly fine. I guess my point would be, I find your suggestion completely unobjectionable. I just don't happen to do it, so I'm not sure exactly what happens. So yeah, I mean, you can cut and paste it in. You can type the pieces of it in, so you can get it under your fingers constructing it. Eclipse actually has nice completion when you start typing things that will sort of walk you through completing it, so you don't have to type the whole thing. So yeah. Question? There is the DOM, so there, I don't know that we have, and we don't have Tony here to ask, I don't know whether we have the providers on the DOM side, which is the data object model side, because this gives you Java bindings that are nice. There's a data object model side that gets translated to where if you were to do things like REST or JSON directly, you would do that there, because it's less structured, or at least it's less built on Java classes and more built on the structure of the data itself. So. Other questions? Okay, cool. So quick show of hands, how many folks have already gone through and added this? You also want to do a rebuild as well. Do rebuild from hello. That'll rebuild everything, including your craft distribution, once you've got this. And so from there, you can actually tell, then you can actually run with your implementation. So it should be a relatively quick thing to go from the edits to the build to having the running implementation. And then I can show you cool things like the Yang UA to test it manually. Yes? Hello provider? Yeah. You're looking at hello world input, not hello provider. Double click on hello provider and it will open it. So you need to double click on the file, not the arrow, the file. Yep, double click. And then it will open it. See?
Now I need to, this is the new one. Or this
This is the existing one that you need to edit.
I need to edit.
Yep.
But can I also put a copy or name create whatever all the stuff using Eclipse?
If you need to. Did you get unstuck? Of course it does. Thank you for looking after it, Marcus. Yes. So two things you can do. The first thing is to go to the API project and just right-click on the API project and choose refresh. It's possible, so right-click on hello world, and choose refresh. Did you finish exercise 2?
I think I did. I'm not too sure.
Okay, so let's do a refresh. We can find out. Okay, could you go into source main yang and let's take a look at your hello.yang. Yep, hello.yang. Okay, you did. Did you rebuild the API directory?
Yeah, we built everything. Yeah.
Huh. Because I'm not seeing the generated classes. So try rebuilding the API directory again and see if the generated classes have come in.
Use the command line here and build it to the.
Yeah, I would suggest building from the command line. I'm not sure quite what Eclipse is going to do if you build it there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would build it from the command line.
I found a bunch of errors.
So just rebuild the API directory. So, Marcus, could you help her make sure she gets exercise 2 taken care of? I think she may have tried to build from Eclipse and it didn't do the yang generation. And so she's now getting exactly what you'd expect when she tries to do exercise 3, which is, what the hell classes? I don't know about these classes. Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, quick show of hands. How many folks have made the changes for the implementation and done their complete rebuild of Hello? Okay, we'll give a few more minutes for folks to get up to speed with that. Yep. I can tell you why, right? Which is they're in the features directory to make sure that your features are specified in such a way that they have all the correct things for the OSGI wiring to work. It runs these tests that check to make sure that the feature can install cleanly in Carafe. But because Carafe's on install at the time this test was written, and this may still be true, but I'm not sure, you couldn't cleanly uninstall. You could only install. It means you have to tear the whole Carafe container down and stand it up again for every feature. So that's why that's taking about a minute all by itself. There's a flag -d skip T tests equals true. And that will skip the tests. Yeah. Yeah, there was a question about why the build is taking so long. And the reason the build is taking so long is that there's a test that checks for OSGI wiring that ends up, for reasons technical, having to stand up and tear down a Carafe container 4 times. And then there's the integration test, which stands up and tears down a Carafe container. So in the course of your build, it's standing up and tearing down the Carafe container 5 times. And that's why the build takes a couple minutes. So while we're waiting for everybody else to get there, I'm actually going to follow the instructions here myself. You'll note, by the way, it's complaining at me for 2 reasons. The first is that I need the import for Hello Service. The second is I haven't written Hello World impl yet. So I'll go ahead and create that class. So having gone ahead and edited the implementation, I'll build the entirety of the hello thing. So I'll go up to hello, maven-nsu, clean install, and that'll take a couple minutes to build. How's everybody else doing? How many folks have made the changes to their implementation and successfully built at this point? Let me see. What?
It failed to delete the assembly directory.
That's strange. Usually clean will do that.
If you have Krakow running, maybe.
Possibly if you have craft running, I don't know. But usually that would still delete it would still unlink the directory. It would just, the directory would continue to exist because it's opened by somebody.
See, they, okay.
Yeah, because usually Maven clean will just drop everything in target.
Like, I don't know whether being in that directory, when the directory is in use.
Shouldn't prevent it from being deleted. Because delete is just an unlink. It just prevents it from being reaped.
Don't expect to see it happen in Linux.
Yeah. Anyone else having difficulties of any sort? Ah, we got somebody back here. Do you want to go? Oh, cool. Thank you. Thon, single feature test. It takes 90% of all the time in the universe.
Can we speed it up?
Maybe.
By not running it?
Yeah, not running it would probably go badly. Nothing, ever wiring right again. Yes. Yep. You imported the wrong something.
Wrong hello service?
No, wait, no, that's not true. Let me take a look.
Sorry. So Yangtools has built these classes.
Yep, yep, yep. So you got the hello service. So let's see the error again.
Sorry.
Show me hello world imp. It does not implement hello world service. Oh, hello service. Strong typing for the win.
And hence the override method is necessary.
It's going to, yeah, it's going to bitch otherwise. I don't remember whether it's, I'm a compliant enough programmer, I don't remember whether it's actually going to blow up or not. All I know is it bitches, and so I just give it what it wants. Happy. Yep. Okay. So, oh, there's a check style violation. So scroll up and see what it is. So if you scroll up, it'll tell you exactly what it's unhappy about. So it's basically saying, I got an unexpected EOF found and. So I'd go take a look at, I'd look at Hello World Impl and see if there's something funky at the end of it. Huh. No, that's provider, you want Impl. Plus, you see, so go to Impl. So go to the top, because it's clearly complaining about some stuff. So let's start at the top. Let's see what it's complaining about there. Yeah, no, the first marker is complaining. Huh. So So scroll down to the very bottom. I'm curious if there's just not something extra sitting at the bottom because it was complaining about an unexpected media file. Looks like you pasted it in twice. You say add out of the existing. Yep. Cool. You just copy pasted a little too much. Anybody else getting stuck, having troubles? Okay. So how many folks have made their edits successfully and built hello successfully? Okay, looks like most folks. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna walk you guys through a little bit of some basic carafe and then using YangYui in order to be able to test your feature. So if you CD into the carafe, well, actually, CD into carafe target assembly bin, which is where you ran it before, and type /carafe to run carafe. So it'll go ahead and come up here at the command line. I'm just gonna show you a few handy things with carafe. Some of you may know them already. So I can take a look and see what features happen to be running. So I can look at feature list -I, which stands for installed, and I can grep -I for hello related things. And that will tell me what features are installed. And I can see the API features installed, the hello feature, the hello REST, and the hello user interface feature. This is just by default when you use the archetype, what gets installed. You could go change any of this subsequently if you wanted to by editing various files. But the nice thing about this is the user interface feature, if I do a feature info ODL hello -UI, it'll tell me about it. And one of the things it tells me is it has features it depends on, and one of those features is the ODL Deluxe YangYui, which is really lovely and handy. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna go ahead and launch a browser. So I'm gonna have to actually pull this down out of the way so I can get to the Chrome icon. And I will launch Chrome. And then if you look in the instructions under the intermission, there is a URL for the YangYui. And you wanna paste that into your Chrome browser in your VM. And it will come up and ask you to log in. The default login is admin. And it will bring this up. I'm going to click on YangYui, which is on the tab here on the side. And let's get everybody to this place. So how many folks have got their carafe up and running? Cool. And how many folks have got the YangYui up where they can see they've clicked the YangYui tab? Mm-hmm.
Carafe, I believe, is running, but that URL.
Let's take a look. Do you want to help? Cool. Yeah, we'll wait a few minutes for folks to catch up. Uh-huh. Okay, so when you run, it should come up. So go to the instructions and look under, after exercise 3, where it talks about the YangYui. It's okay, it's all good. So intermission, introduction to the YangYui, and there's a URL there. You need to take that URL and you need to launch Chrome inside your VM and access that URL. That one, yep, but it needs to be done inside your VM because it's not going to be accessible from outside your VM, at least not as localhost. So if you pull this to one side, there's an icon for Chrome on your desktop. Yeah, it is important that you actually use the Chrome inside your VM. Otherwise, localhost is not going to be where you're running. Okay, so how many folks have the Yang UI up at this point? Okay, that's a goodly number of you. So if you look at it, it's got all these things that have shown up. What it's done is it's gone into the controller, and it has pulled out the currently active and available models in the controller, one of which is your hello model that you see here. And if I click on the plus sign, it will show me that it has some operations. And if I drill down into the operations, I can see the operation hello world. So I'll give everybody a second to catch up with that. And you may have to scroll down to see it, but when I select hello world, I get a path that will give me the opportunity to do a post to it. And I can fill in the input here. In this case, I'll fill in my name. So Ed Warnicke. And if I click the send button, it will come back with the output, which is hello, Ed Warnicke. And so you can actually use the Yang UI to see the implementation that you just wrote actually working. And there's actually one other really cool thing that it does, which is it will give you a preview of exactly what was sent to rest. It will show you the URL. It will show you the input that went into it, completely filled out with what I put in the input box down here. If I come down here and I change it to John Smith, it updates the preview. And so if you're in a position where you want to use something like Postman, or you want to write Python scripts, or you want to do something where, gee, how do I figure out what the rest for this is? This will give it to you. Oh, so for reasons historical, RESTconf in the Helium release was on port 8181. It's now on both port 8181 and port 8080, as we're in the process of migration. And so the Yang UI just hasn't been updated to use port 8080 yet. It will be, obviously, in Beryllium. Any other questions, or? Yep. So Yang UI is a deluxe application. So Deluxe is actually built as a framework for user interface applications to work with OpenDaylight. It's actually incredibly cool what they've done. Because what they've done with it is, the Deluxe itself is a pure JavaScript GUI that's capable of talking to the backend, and it's componentized. So you can literally take Deluxe components and build them to other applications, and it will correctly use Chorus for cross-site scripting and all the rest of the stuff. But in terms of this right here, you can also build your Deluxe application, and it can plug itself into the Carafe container and show up as an application so that when your feature gets loaded with your UI feature, that suddenly your little tab like Yang UI can show up there and people can access it. No, it is using Deluxe. It's built on Deluxe, but Deluxe is the user interface framework. Yang UI is just a user interface application built on top of Deluxe. So I couldn't be more pleased with what the Deluxe guys have done. So, yes? Admin. So how many folks have been able to see their code working using Yang UI? Awesome. Isn't it lovely when things work? So now you've manually tested your Hello World RPC. We'll give a couple more minutes for folks to catch up, and then the next thing on our agenda, now that you've seen this with Yang UI and you've manually tested, is going to be exercise 5, integration testing your Hello World RPC is going to be next up. So we're going to build an automated integration test that will test this. Philosophically, I tend to be one of these people who doesn't believe that tests tell you anything except that nothing changed. So this will tell you that nothing has changed in the result of your hello world as you continue to change it moving forward, which is a really comforting thing. Cool. So how many folks have now seen things working with their implementations? The number's going down. Okay. So people feel okay moving on to exercise 5? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to skip the debugger. Thank you for keeping me honest. Let's do that, because debuggers are awesome. So we'll go back here. I will bring up the Eclipse again. Yes. Oh, you mean the rest piece? Let me show you. So let me dismiss this. So there's a show preview button. And that basically will give you the preview of the REST call. You don't. So you just have to type in, like, I've typed in John Smith here as the input, but I haven't actually sent it yet. I can show the preview here, and then I can send it, and it will come back and say, hello, John Smith. So, debuggers. So when I bring up Eclipse, and I look at my code, let me make Eclipse a little bit bigger. There we go. So when I bring up Eclipse and I look at my code, and I can see in Hello World impl, so let's look at Hello World impl, I can put my cursor in the little margin next to line 16 and double click, and a little blue ball will appear. So as everyone, everyone's looking now at Hello World impl. At the beginning of my Hello World, I want to double click and put a little blue ball. That's a breakpoint. And then I need to run Carafe in a debug mode. So I'll bring my terminal back up. I'll do a shutdown dash F, which will stop Carafe. And then I will run /carafe debug. So just put debug as a command line argument to Carafe. It will start up in debug mode. So I do that. It will tell me that it is listening on port 5005. So it is listening for the debugger to connect on that port. So if I come back to Eclipse, I can click the open perspective icon, which is next to the icon that says Java EE, to bring up debug mode, or I can go to the menu. This is probably easier. I can go to the menu at the top, choose Run, and choose Debug Configurations, where I will configure the debugger to connect to that. So, came back. So you'll want to scroll down to Remote Java Application. As you can see, it has a lot of options for the kinds of things you could debug. And then under Remote Java Application, if I right-click, there is a New option. So I click New, and it brings this up. It wants to record the project. I will usually not record the project, just because I will use this for whatever I'm doing. And it'll want to give it a name that matches the class, which you can or can't keep. That's up to you. I'll often just call it Carafe debug, but it's inconsequential what you choose to call it. That's for your own reference. It's going to try and connect to localhost, and by default, it's going to try port 8000. But we were told when Carafe launched, and it's always going to say this unless you tell it differently, that it's going to be using port 5005. And we can see that again in the terminal. It is bound to port 5005. So I fill that out, and the next tab I go to is source. And I have to tell it what source to look up in when it's looking things up for debugging. So I'll click the Add button, and I will pick Java project, and click OK. And I will just select all. And what this does is it brings all the source code in from all my Java projects into the debugging configuration. And you can see them show up there. And once I've stepped through this, I can click debug. So, quick question. How many folks are actually at this point right now? Okay, so we'll wait a few seconds for other people to get to this point so that we can all sort of move forward somewhat together. Yes? I'm sorry, what is the what? Of course. So, Connect tab. It's just localhost port 5005. Yes? Yes?
So what do I need to do next on the
We configure Eclipse. Yeah, we're configuring it to connect, and then we put a breakpoint at the beginning of our method. Right. So basically, go up to the menu, under Run, choose Debug Configurations, and that will bring up this dialog, almost this dialog. And then you'll see where I've created a new thing under Remote Java Applications. You would right-click on Remote Java Applications to create a new something. And from there, you'll get this set of tab and dialog that you can fill out. Oh, that's because the reason you don't see Hello World implementation is I happen to have that file open when I chose to create a debug configuration. By default, it will give it the name of the class I had opened, which is a perfectly fine default. I happen to have renamed it in my case to craft debug, but because I haven't applied those changes yet, it's still showing up in the menu as Hello World. In fact, let me go ahead and apply them because that will make it less confusing. So how many folks are at this point with the debug screen at this point? Okay, we're catching up a bit. Anybody stuck? Need a hand? So if you move the cursor up to the top here, and you won't see it in this case because I've got the dialog up, there is a menu that comes up. There's an item Run there in that menu. Under Run, choose Debug Configurations. Also true. But my experience has been the reliability of directing humans to icons is much worse than text. So. No, that's the default it chooses. I happen to have just renamed it craft debug because that name at the top is just for your own reference. Doesn't have to be empty. I happen to pick it to be empty. You can leave it the way it is. It should be fine. So when you run carafe, instead of just saying /carafe, you say /carafe space debug. And that will cause it to run in debug mode. So how many folks are at this screen or have moved beyond it? Okay, we're getting a little better. So are there people stuck at particular places? Oh, where? You don't have to use any project, or you can just use the default it chooses for you. But you do want to make sure you go to the source tab and add the projects as source, or debugging is going to be less interesting. Yeah, on the source tab, the add button. And then you'll select projects. Yep, I usually do, but I'm sloppy like that. Okay, so how many folks are at this screen? Okay, we're picking up some more. So let's go ahead and we'll proceed from here. If you have questions, we can have folks come around again and help you out. So in this case, I'll just basically click the debug button at the end, at the bottom of this. And we'll go up to the top and click Open Perspective. So right next to J2E, there's this button here that will click Open Perspective. You can also do it from window, from moving to the menu here at the top, using Window, Perspective, Open Perspective, Debug. Yes? Are you running carafe with carafe /carafe space debug? Is that running currently? Okay. Interesting, okay. So if I switch to the debug perspective, I can actually see here in the debug perspective, I can see it running. So I think we had some people over there who were, okay, good. Neighborly help, excellent. Anyone else who's stuck? Okay. I'm sorry, what? 5005. And if you go back and look at the console, it'll tell you that. Yes? I'm sorry, what? Oh, so if you go to, in the menu, go to Window, Show Perspective, and then there's another menu item to pick the perspective, and then Debug is the perspective you want. And that will look very much like this. I'll go ahead and show you again. So if I bring the cursor up towards the top, Window, Perspective, Open Perspective, and it's taken that option away because I'm on that perspective, but it would be the first one here at the top, Debug, normally, if you're in a different perspective. Okay, how many folks are at this point? Okay. So what you can do is, and I'm not gonna run you through this at first, because I want you guys to go back and try and remember how to do it yourselves. Go back to the Yang UI and try and manually drive your Hello World app again. And when you do that, you should see it hit your breakpoint that we said earlier, and you should be able to walk through it. So go ahead and do that and see if you can just get to the point where the breakpoint is tripped. Is anyone having trouble remembering how to drive the Yang UI? Okay. So it won't come back when I drive the Yang UI because when I go look at Eclipse, I have hit that breakpoint. So I can look at the stack trace. I can see the Hello World impl where I set my breakpoint here on line 16. So how many folks are roughly at this point? Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about what's here. We won't move on per se. So if you look, you've got this, which is just the object there. You've got the input that came in. You can drill down into the fields in the input, which is not very interesting because, and you see some of the magic under the covers when you start looking at the debugger. There's a complicated series of lazy objects and proxies that provide all kinds of interesting performance enhancements. Among other things, the translation that happens between the JSON for the DOM side, all that translation is lazy, meaning that until you actually get to a piece of Java code that wants it, no work has been done. And so it makes it a little bit annoying when you're trying to drill in with your debugger and say, for the love of God, would you just tell me the damn name? But it's really performant. And that's, oddly enough, ends up being more important in the final analysis. But as you can see, there's a lot of interesting stuff that goes into that. And from here, I can sort of step through this. How many folks have used the Java debugger before in Eclipse? Or have used the debugger to step through something? Okay, so the lovely thing with the debugger is you can step by step through the steps in your code and see how things change. So for example, right now in variables, I have this in input. If I come up to here, this is the step over button, which you can also get to with F6. And I step over this line, and it turns out I happen to have 3 lines here, so I've got it for one statement, so I've got to step over all 3. Then I can see output has been formed. And I can see my output object. There's a string version of it. And I can drill down into its fields and see the greeting field. So if I was getting something that I didn't expect, I could walk through it here. So, which, in an example this simple, not a huge deal, but life gets complicated, and debuggers are your friend. Yes? Of course. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tell this it can continue running. So run. That's interesting. Oh, sorry, wrong button. Resume. The buttons are a little different here than I'm accustomed to on my home ID. So I've set it off to resume, which means when I go back to the Yang UI, it's actually come back with my response. But starting from the top with Yang UI, if I just reload it, it comes in, presuming that you don't have to re-authenticate. It will take a minute, load the models. I go click the plus sign next to hello, and the plus sign next to operations, select hello world, and then scroll down a little bit, and I can see where I provide the input. And click send. And once again, it will trip my breakpoint. I'm sorry, what? So the resume button is over here. I was a little confused too. I kept trying to click run because it was where I usually keep resume. It's amazing. The human brain's often more positional than visual sometimes, or at least mine is. So if I click resume, it will just keep going. And I can see the response come back in the Yang UI. Yep. I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what? Yes, but this project isn't currently loading the OpenFlow plugin features, so I'd have to actually do the work to bring all those features in. I'd have to set up the repo and the POM files and that kind of stuff. It's a doable thing. It's absolutely doable. So for that, you'd want to get the OpenFlow plugin project and find the appropriate entry point in that project for what you're looking at there to debug. Uh-huh. So I'll be completely honest, I'm not the YourKit expert. That would probably be someone like Jan Medved, who's around this week. But I don't actually personally do a lot of profiling with YourKit. I'm aware of it. I have a copy lying around somewhere. But I saw that going by and was extremely happy about it. I still haven't had a chance to play with it. So. Okay. So has everyone managed, so yes? Let me take a look.
I hit the debug, and I can't tell whether it's actually executing.
Go up to run. I'm sorry, not run, window. Perspective. Open perspective. Debug. And this is showing you the threads.
Okay, so this is running.
This is running. So now you need to go to Yang UI and actually poke it, because until a request comes in, your breakpoint won't be tripped. Totally. You were almost completely there. It is disconcerting that it doesn't, if you actually hit a breakpoint, it would offer to take you the perspective. Uh-huh. So you've got Hello World you've already selected. If you scroll down, you can enter a name into the input. Cool, and then click send. Now, you don't get a response back, because if you go back to, you notice how that's shaking? If you go back to Eclipse, you've hit your breakpoint. And until you tell it to resume, which is that little green button there, by the way.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so
Yep.
this is what makes it go, and then it will complete the transaction.
Yep, and there's like step over, step into, step out of.
Okay, wait, so those are.
That's resume.
Yep.
And then you've got step into, step over.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yep. Cool. Yep. Ah, so let's, did you click debug when you got to the debug piece? So go to run, perspective, I'm sorry, window perspective. Window? Next to run, window, the top level menu. No. No, you won't. Go to window, right next to run, between run and help. There we go. Perspective, open perspective. Yep, you want to go to the debug perspective. You opened a second Eclipse. Right, and so you're not currently running the debugger. So did you set up the debug config? So go to run. Go down to debug configurations, ... Debug configurations, ... further down. There we go. Yep. Okay, and go down to remote Java applications at the very bottom of your list. Right click, choose new. This is probably starting to feel familiar. And then 5005, and then just debug. Now you're in business. You're welcome. So, anybody else stuck? Okay, so how many folks now are able to actually hit their breakpoint and see in the debugger? Awesome, that's fabulous. Cool. So, you now know how to set up a debugger against your running carafe, which is gonna make your life enormously better. Because it's not hard, but how long do you guys think you would have taken sort of sorting all that out? It took me about half a day the first time. So we've done that. So we've gone through the debugger, and I think the next thing up is exercise 5, integration testing the Hello World RPC. And what you will find is that you have a file hello-it.java that's in your hello-it project. And you need to add something to it. So let's take a quick look at that file in Eclipse. So I'm going to go back to the Java perspective for J2E. There's a little button where it keeps track of the open perspectives here. I'm just going to pick the one for Java EE, which will take me back to where we were before. And I can go down to the Hello IT project and drill down into that. So Hello IT, and under source test Java, in the hello.it package, there is a hello.it Java file. So these first few things, like get module name, get instance name, feature repo, and feature name, these were all filled out automatically for you by the archetype. If you have reason to change them, you certainly can, but for the moment, they're perfectly fine. And we gave you one test to begin with, which is the test hello features load test, which looks kind of trivial. It just asserts true. But the truth is that in the base class for this test, this test is derived from a base class. In the base class, there is a fixture, a thing that has to run before any test, that makes sure that your feature has correctly loaded. So if any test runs at all, you know your feature it succeeds. You know your feature is correctly loaded. Now, you don't know if it's doing the right thing. That's what we've got to test now, is that it's doing the right thing. So we're here in this file, and if you go back to the instructions, it will tell you two things. One is there's a convenience method here to set up logging options. I probably should have put this into the archetype, and I probably will, but it's not currently. And all it basically does is it sets things up so that things that are in your packages, when you log, you see those logs in the integration test, which is handy, because then you can track your own logging. And then the real meat of it is this test that you want to add, where basically all you end up doing is you decide on the string you want to use for the name, feel free to use your own. You get the hello world service, you put together an input for it. You go ahead and you call it. You unpack the thing. You make sure that it is actually successful, so it came back successfully as a result. And then you compare what you got back as the greeting to what you expected. So it's a pretty straightforward test of the Hello World RPC, and that goes in hello IT. Both of these things go in the hello IT file. One of the things you'll find as the exercises proceed from here is I am not giving you the full file anymore. I'm giving you the pieces to add, but the thing that gets sometimes confusing is figuring out which imports you want. So I do start to give you, these are the imports you're looking for, because when you put those methods in and you do Control-Shift-O so that it does cleanup imports, or you right-click and choose from source cleanup imports, which at that point, Eclipse will try and figure out what imports you need. If it has two things that look like they might be it, this list will help you figure out which one you actually want. And when you're done with that, you can just go into your hello/IT directory and rerun it, and you'll see then that it's actually running 2 tests instead of 1 test, because it's now running your test of the hello service. And I'll give you guys a little time to chew on that. Anyone still stuck with debugging or other previous things? I'm going to get water real quick. I'm getting really hoarse. I think it's going pretty well.
My daughter wants to go to the Cisco talks. I'm not going to go.
I'm sorry. Oh, oh yeah,
Bring her and live with somebody else so that she can go with them.
Yep. Yeah. All right.
Yes, at some point I want to kind of step out for some time.
Just let me know when. How's it going? Yep. Sure. So go look at the imports. Import static. Yeah, but to go back to the options list I gave you, it's a static option import. Yeah. So you've done nothing wrong. I just did something slightly funky. The PAX exam guys, they're in the habit of doing static imports, that kind of stuff, so I followed that. Yes.
Using this Warnicke or whatever MD-SAL laptop that we have done, is it possible only to do post, or we can do other functionalities also? Like
To the operations, or so the data tree you can do things like get, post, get, put, etc. But the RPCs are operations.
every
If you're doing an RPC, so we're specifically doing RPCs, which are point-to-point messages. So they naturally will have an input and possibly an output.
So it's going to be a post all the time.
For the operations, when we get to the data tree stuff, which it looks like it'll probably be after lunch. With the data tree stuff, you do more traditional REST sort of behavior where you say, okay, I want to get, I want to post, because the data tree is actually state information. The RPCs are literally just a message. You send a message, you get a response. So.
So if there's no input, this won't work.
Right, because it doesn't have anything to chew on. But with a data tree, you can say, okay, I want to do a get and see what data's there. You can put data there, et cetera.
And we can even customize these REST format that is being created. Like right now, whatever is getting created, the URL. It's like a direct pick from the YAML files that we have.
Yeah, it is all just automatically generated, so you have a nice, consistent REST interface everywhere. So you algorithmically get from your REST, from your Yang file, exactly what your REST is going to look like. And that also allows things like the Yang UI to work, because the Yang UI can read the models and construct exactly what the REST input looks like.
But we can have multiple YAML files.
Of course.
RPC call, and we can have that.
You can have multiple Yang modules. They can have different RPCs, different data tree, things they contribute to the data tree. Other people can bring Yang models you don't know anything about. People can bring Yang models you care about, but you didn't write. It's all fine. Cool. You're welcome. Yes? It's okay.
If I use the VM, this is my own environment here.
Did you unpack the M2 file?
Yeah, I did. Put it in my home.
Okay, so you don't want to build core tutorials. You want to build the hello.
Just the home.
You want to create the hello, and you want to build just the hello. Now, not the hello that comes in core tutorials, the one that you build with the archetype. So go back to exercise 1 on the wiki. Do you have the wiki page? Yeah, exercise 1 walks you right through it. Yep. It's entirely possible, because core tutorials is there. It does have a hello subdirectory. It's easy to get confused. I probably should have removed it. But Casey was like, where is it? It's going to take 10 hours to replicate these. And I'm like, I didn't think it would take that long. Yeah, it should be fun. You had a question? Okay, cool. Is there progress? Yes, progress. Exercise 1. I'm very excited.
Me too.
So excited.
This is great. So the problem is, I do that tail,
Control C.
Control C.
And that takes you back to the prompt. It's supposed to.
Control C, Control D. I had to kill the task, which seems so sad. Makes me sad to have to kill.
Yeller, old Yeller.
Yeah, it is.
I cry every time. So sad.
If they had vaccinated it.
I know. No one thinks to vaccinate their processes when they're young. It's just irresponsible.
So you've never seen this before, it's probably.
No, I've not seen Control C not work there before.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
It is weird. Now, you can also do like log::display and then pipe it through a grep. And then you don't hang out like this. It'll just take you back to the command line.
That's exactly what I was just talking about. Log::.
Display. By the way, they have tab completion, so you can find out all these happy things.
Okay, if I would never guess that the display entailed anything different, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, well, I mean,
So this goes to the console.
think of display as cat. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, now we're talking your language. Yes. So Carafe is an OSGI container, but it has some really nice features about the way you can organize bundles into features that make it really nice. Because if you're just trying to assemble like a feature, typically there are many bundles that go into a feature. If you're trying to assemble it all by hand, you very rapidly approach the point where you want to kill yourself. So usually. So typically we do everything feature-wise. We don't do them bundle-wise. So like if I had additional bundles that I wanted there, I would create a feature for them, and I would say feature install that feature. Oh, so the MDSal config store is persistent already. So the config store is persistent. You can remove the persistence. But so not each class or not each bundle, but some logical collection of them. So for example, like OpenFlow plugin, there's a bunch of bundles that make up OpenFlow plugin. It's just good modularity at the bundle level, but you always want to install them as a group. And like as you move further up, so like if I wanted to install something like group-based policies with their OF overlay renderer, it needs whatever features OpenFlow plugin is bringing, plus whatever features this other thing is bringing. And so rather than it having to know all the bundles, which is just bad, so I want these bundles. And then if the guys doing OpenFlow plugin decide they need a new bundle, they just add it to their feature and nobody's any wiser. Yes? Clash of plugins and oh, you.
It's not too happy with the palms right now.
Yeah.
Is there a way for me to resolve that? Because I'd like to get like a fully happy project so I can look into it. And,
You're one of those people.
yeah, anal retentive programming. Yes.
I used to be. I had to get over it.
Well,
So.
I'm new to open source, so.
Well, no, so here's the thing. I can tell you this. So it's possible you can convince Eclipse to really ignore them directly. There is something called the plugin lifecycle, the bundle lifecycle or something like that. And I've actually fixed quite a number of them in the archetype, actually in the parent palms further upstream. So that you're not getting all the ones you could possibly get because you can actually put in the palm files, things that say, dude, I know you don't know about this, just chill. Not quite a, it's basically.
I know what's going on. Stop this, right? Stop helping me.
You've been a C programmer, haven't you?
You name it, I've been it.
Cool.
C, Lisp, Pascal, C++, Java, Perl.
I feel you. I've production coded over a dozen languages. I can't even name them all at the same time. So yeah, so you can do that. So like one of the things you could do if you really want to get anal retentive is you could actually, and I'd have to go look up the right incantation, but you can actually put stuff in your POM files that says, hey, ignore this. Okay. The right solution though is to figure out what those things are and we'll get them up into the, if they're things that are actually coming from the parent POMs, we'll get them up in the parent POMs where they belong. So that it all cascades down correctly to everybody else. And frankly, I should have done that. It's just, people add stuff and it gets away from you.
Yeah, it's fine. Version 2.
Sure.
Eclipse will be present, so what's the input actually? So usually when I add some more code, it should say when I right click or when I click on that, it should say input this.
It's not really showing errors. You
Yeah,
can't click through to see the definitions.
Oh, it's not showing the errors even though you have errors?
Yeah, it's like the imports, we didn't fix the imports. Mine's doing the same thing.
That is bizarre. I've never seen that in Eclipse either.
Yeah. Whenever Eclipse, I switched to IntelliJ about a year ago. I've Eclipse for 10 years.
Yeah.
Whenever I've seen it act weird like this, sometimes it means toss your workspace, but this is early on. I mean, usually it takes like months.
Before I tossed a workspace, I'd restart Eclipse.
Yeah, sure.
Although, like with everything living in a separate directory away from the workspace, tossing the workspace is not as traumatic.
Yeah.
So.
That's right. I always keep myself out. The workspace like that.
Yeah.
Gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Are you able to run this graph on JDK 1.8?
It's running on JDK 1.8 right now. Yeah. We actually had to upgrade to a version that would. So, but yeah, no. When you start graph, it has this little annoying thing where it basically says, I don't need this permgen thing anymore. I'm 1.8. I'm ignoring it because it doesn't matter to me.
I saw that.
Yep. So this is actually running on 1.8. Currently, we work on 1.7 and 1.8. And there's an active discussion as to like, how long are we going to keep making 1.7 work? Mostly from people who really want like advanced functional features. Or like, I want to use the 1.8 features. Yep.
So I cloned that repository came from
Cloned repository? What?
So it says.
Don't clone core tutorials. You need to use the archetype. Who said you? No, you shouldn't have to clone. I don't know who put that there. You just want to undo. Yeah, you just want to unzip the M2 zip. I don't know who put that there. It certainly wasn't me. Yeah, don't do the one from core tutorials. Yeah, don't do the one from core tutorials. In fact, that should be removed. It's confusing people. If that works, yeah. Yes.
So you're running
Ah. So often what you need to do is scroll further up because it will usually give more detailed exceptions further up in the log. Okay.
So now, of course, Carafe was still running in debug.
That will cause problems.
We would
Because
have to bring that down anyway for the next section. So I tried shutting that down and rerunning it, and of course it takes.
yeah, it has to stand up the whole craft thing, unfortunately. Integration testing is like that. Yes?
Quick question. Where configuration for Carafe is located? For example, during the integration testing, we launching Carafe, appliance and configuration. Where exactly it's specified?
Okay, so there are two ways this is done. One is the way you actually build out a craft distribution, which is what's in your craft directory, right? And for that, there's this thing called the craft parent. It is full of magic. There's so much magic in craft parent, so that you don't have to say much in your POM file. And it will basically go through and it will, whatever feature files you have a runtime dependency on, it will take those feature files as repos. And if those feature files have done their dependency magic correctly, then it will copy all that stuff into the system directory and it gives you this runnable thing. For the integration test, it's a little bit different because you're using PAX exam. And so with PAX exam, you can also say, hey, I want to load this feature. And PAX exam will pull all the stuff in to load that feature, which is what we're doing here. We've got a feature that came from the archetype, ODL hello UE, and that's being loaded by the PAX exam stuff.
So PAX exam loads configuration from the test and resolves dependency.
Well, yes, it resolves the dependencies for the features. Yeah. So the features you load.
That annotation run with specifies.
If you're curious about the magic going on under covers, you can drill down through the base classes. Eclipse is usually pretty good about, actually that's not gonna work just yet, but you can drill down through the base classes and sort of look at what's going on there and how that's being handled. Because essentially, like, all those things are like giving a module name, a feature name. That's all feeding something that goes and says, okay, we're gonna set up all the carafe options for the integration tests and so forth. And so all the work lives in the base classes, and you just have the stuff on top that's, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so, yeah? Uh-huh.
So I did import the other things, but this one actually throws up an error, so I do an import here. This one. But then it throws up errors for this.
So go look at the imports that I had listed there, and let's compare the import for that to the one you've got in your file.
Should I just copy them?
So it's there, and go look and see if you have a line that looks like that in your file. Oh, try saving. Save. Okay, so it's complaining about something different, so scroll down. So it's finding the import. No, result, not result builder. Yep, you're absolutely right. Good eye. And it's happy. Cool. Of course. I'm sorry, what?
I want to know how to add the core.
So, interesting.
Because I didn't use NSU, but I just override it without it.
Ah.
I really want to know how to, put it in my
Okay.
application dependency, not just, using.
Yeah. So you've run into something where, yeah. So you've stomped that. What I would suggest is go get the M2 that I included and then unwrap it here, because it appears like you've pulled a bum artifact.
That would solve the problem, but I really want to know how to add dependency here, so I can.
Okay. So what's happening is the archetype. So.
You know what I'm saying, right?
You
I know it will work if I copy.
Oh yeah, so you're wanting to find out, so go look at your features. So look at hello features, source features, I think? Source main features. Features, feature.xml. Okay, let's look at the source. Yeah, I'm an XML guy too. So scroll down to ODL. Yeah, so scroll down to probably the last feature is going to be ODL hello UE. Okay. Huh, did you not use NSU when you did the archetype generation? So did you not use NSU when you did the archetype? Ah, okay, yeah, so you used the wrong archetype artifact, so you got everything generated with the old archetype. So yeah, you will need to unpack and rebuild the archetype with one that's actually got the right pieces there. I mean, there's a lot of manual changes you could make, but it's a lot of manual changes. Yeah, I mean, I could actually sit down and probably spend 20 minutes and walk you through it, but not today. Cool. Yep. All right, so real quick, how many folks have their integration test running and succeeding? That's awesome, you guys are doing great. So, what? Indeed. So, okay, cool. So we've got folks running. If you could unlock this, Raghu, I think next up is I'm going to show you how to actually use the debugger with your integration test, which is also exciting. Although I will be very clear that the thing I'm going to show you with the debugger, the stuff I showed you with Carafe is true for Carafe all the time. The thing that I'm going to show you with the debugger is particular to the way we've implemented the integration tests in the base classes. So it should work anything that's using the archetype, but if you go some other random PAX exam thing, it's not going to quite work. At least not the same way.
So we should have left it where it was broken?
No. It's not broken. It's just.
No. We changed the hello to hello W in.
Oh yeah, how many people have broken their test? Okay, you people need to break more of your tests. If you'd like, you can either way. Either way works. You can leave it broken and then go debugging. That's a perfectly good thing. So this actually ends up being pretty much very, very close to what we did before. Just a little bit different entry point. So if you look at exercise 6, debugging the integration test, actually this is something you guys can do by yourself. You don't need me. Because the instructions here are actually pretty complete. Now that you've already learned how to set up Carafe debug, going to port 5005, so you should all have that debug configuration from when we did it before. You just have to, in the integration test directory, use the -d Carafe debug flag when you run your Maven build, and it will start running. It will get to that point where it's starting the Carafe container, and it will wait for your debugger to connect. And at that point, you can connect your debugger and you can walk through and debug. So you guys can actually move on to exercise 6 without me walking you through it. But if you get stuck, feel free to ask for help. And I think we got 7 minutes left in the session, so we'll probably have to pick up the tail end of exercise 6 and get into data store concepts when we get back from lunch. One moment. All right, guys, it's lunchtime. So I would highly recommend getting lunch while there is still lunch to be gotten. If you would like to know where lunch is, I don't know. But someone that way does. Okay, cool, it's out of the pool. So you had a question? See?
Now I need to, this is the new, or this
This is the existing one that you need to edit.
I need to edit.
Yep.
But can I also put a copy or name period, whatever all the stuff using the caps?
If you need to. Did you get unstuck? Of course. course it does. Thank you for looking after me, Marcus. Yes. So two things you can do. The first thing is to go to the API project and just right-click on the API project and choose refresh. It's possible, so right-click on hello world and choose refresh. Did you finish exercise 2?
I think I did. I'm not too sure.
Okay, so let's do a refresh. We can find out. Okay, could you go into source main yang and let's take a look at your hello.yang. Yep, hello.yang. Okay, you did. Did you rebuild the API directory?
Yeah, to rebuild everything. Yeah.
Huh. Because I'm not seeing the generated classes. So try rebuilding the API directory again and see if the generated classes have come in.
Use the command line here and build it to the.
Yeah, I would suggest building from the command line. I'm not sure quite what Eclipse is going to do if you build it there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would build it from the command line.
I found a bunch of errors.
So just rebuild the API directory. Completion when you start typing things that will sort of walk you through completing it so you don't have to type the whole thing. So yeah. Question? There is the DOM, so there, I don't know that we have, and we don't have Tony here to ask, I don't know whether we have the providers on the DOM side, which is the data object model side, because this gives you Java bindings that are nice. There's a data object model side that gets translated to where if you were to do things like REST or JSON directly, you would do that there, because it's less structured, or at least it's less built on Java classes and more built on the structure of the data itself. So. Other questions? Okay, cool. So quick show of hands, how many folks have already gone through and added this? You also want to do a rebuild as well. Do rebuild from hello. That'll rebuild everything, including your craft distribution, once you've got this. And so from there, you can actually then you can actually run with your implementation. So it should be a relatively quick thing to go from the edits to the build to having the running implementation. And then I can show you cool things like the Yang UA to test it manually. Yes? Hello provider? Yeah. You're looking at hello world input, not hello provider. Double click on hello provider and it will open it. So you need to double click on the file, not the arrow, the file. Yep, double click. And then it will open it. Welcome back. Who here is excited about cookies? Everyone is usually very excited about cookies. That's why break is lovely. Cool. So do we have any new folks who have just joined the tutorial at this stage? Okay, so if you're new and you're just joining the tutorial, ask your friendly neighbors. We'll grab a USB key and ask your friendly neighbors, and they will help you get up and going. There's a VM to boot with, and we've already gone through exercise 1 and exercise 2 on the wiki page, and they can point you to the wiki page. And the good news is the room is now full of people who are experts on exercise 1 and exercise 2 who can help you catch up. So if you're new, grab a USB key, and your neighbors can help you. Raghu, I'm locked out again. So how are folks feeling about this so far? Are you feeling like it's you all seem to be getting it, which is great, and you seem to be picking up pace as you go along. Exercise 2 went quite a bit faster now that we're all up and going. So I think we're doing well. Okay. So moving on to exercise 3, implementing your Hello World RPC. So this is actually pretty straightforward, and all the information is there on the wiki page. You just need to edit 2 files. The first is your Hello World. You need to create a Hello World impl.java, which is the class for the implementation of your Hello World service. And I actually give you a complete version of the file here. I would actually suggest strongly that copy the imports and that kind of stuff, which is annoying, but actually do sort of type through the body of the Hello service, because that will sort of get into your fingers the kind of thing that you're doing. Because what we're doing is very straightforward. We get a Hello World input, we're constructing the output, and then we're returning it. So it's not hugely complex, but sometimes it can get it into your fingernails to type somewhat for that part of it, instead of just copy and paste. Other questions?
Are we supposed to edit this with Eclipse?
I would choose to edit it with Eclipse because it has really nice characteristics for editing Java, yes.
Okay, well, you did a good job of providing us the CLI path,
Uh-huh.
but that's not very obvious in the...
Hang on.
Which one is that?
I will show you. So if we look at Eclipse, we're looking at the Hello Impl project. And when we drill down into Hello Impl, there's a source main Java directory, which has 2 packages. This is the one we're interested in. You can see the Hello provider here. And let me actually pull this back so it's a little more readable. And so this is the Hello provider you have, which just has this log message that you saw the output from. Does that make sense? And you want to put your Hello World impl in the same package. So you would right-click, new class, and you could create your Hello World impl there. My general recommendation is if you're going to edit Java, use something like Eclipse or IntelliJ. It's just, it's really abusive of humans to make them edit Java otherwise. I usually just let them hang around. They don't bother me particularly. Mm-hmm. No, I understand. And that's perfectly fine. I guess my point would be, I find your suggestion completely unobjectionable. I just don't happen to do it, so I'm not sure exactly what happens. So yeah, I mean, you can cut and paste it in, you can type the pieces of it in, so you can get it under your fingers constructing it. Eclipse actually has nice, the whole thing. And so once you've got that implementation, then you need to hook it up. And that you do by editing the hello provider.java. And in the hello provider.java, basically what you need to do is in your on session initiated, by the way, this line here, that's the line that produced the log file you looked for in exercise 1. This is the entry point for you into the application. And so this is the hello provider session log, and you just want to initiate it. You just want to hook up by registering your hello world impl as an RPC implementation with the MD-SAL. And this line does it. Basically, you grab the session, you add an RPC implementation, you tell it what kind of thing it is, and you pass the implementation. And then it's also good hygiene to have a close method that will go through and close that registration. We'll basically close this when, it will close down the service registration that you have when you yourself are closed down. Otherwise, you wind up with people who are done, and yet it still looks like RPCs can be delivered to you. Question?
So we're implementing the impl class
Yep.
outside of the generated function.
Correct.
But this hello provider is in the generated function.
Hello provider already exists.
We're modifying that?
we're modifying that. So it already exists. You will find that it already has this log line, which is what generated what you saw when you ran.
So is this a standard practice of having to modify the generated code?
Well, so the provider class was not generated by Yang tools. It's not generated specifically from the model. It's provided as part of the archetype. So it's essentially, it was provided to you as a convenience, because my experience as a developer is the thing that makes me happiest in life is when things run. And so I wanted to make sure that things got from 0 to run as quickly as possible. So, yeah. Normally, the stuff that's generated by Yang tools in the Yang sal gen directory, don't change that because it's going to be stomped every single time you build. But this is only created by the archetype.